He was alone, terrified, and hunted in the desolate Texas canyons. Just when she thought her story would end in tragedy, a shadow moved, swift, silent, and deadly. But who was he, and why did he come? What happens next will change everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Texas sun blazed mercilessly across the endless prairie, turning the August afternoon into a furnace of heat and dust. 20-year-old Sarah Bennett gripped the reins of her chestnut mare, her emerald eyes scanning the horizon with mounting dread. Her golden hair, typically arranged in elegant curls befitting a rancher's daughter, now hung in disheveled strands across her face, damp with perspiration and fear. The white cotton dress she wore, once pristine for her journey to visit her aunt in San Antonio, was now torn at the hem and stained with dirt from her desperate flight. Behind her, perhaps 2 miles distant, she could hear them. The Harrington brothers and their gang of 4 other men, their whoops and hollers carrying across the flat landscape like the baying of wolves closing in on wounded prey. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she urged her mare forward, though the animal was clearly exhausted, foam gathering at the corners of its mouth. "Come on, Daisy, please," Sarah whispered desperately to her horse, her voice cracking with emotion. "Just a little further. We have to find somewhere to hide." The nightmare had begun 3 hours earlier, when she'd stopped at a creek to water her horse. The Harrington brothers, notorious outlaws wanted in 3 territories for robbery and worse crimes, had spotted her traveling alone. Their leader, Colt Harrington, a scarred man with dead eyes and a reputation for cruelty, had approached with false courtesy that quickly dissolved into sinister intent when Sarah refused his advances. She'd managed to mount Daisy and flee, but they'd given chase immediately, treating her escape as sport, as a hunt. Sarah knew what awaited her if they caught up. She'd heard the stories whispered in town about women who'd encountered the Harrington gang. None of those stories ended well. The landscape around her offered little sanctuary. Sparse mesquite trees dotted the grassland, providing no real cover. Rocky outcroppings rose occasionally from the earth, but none large enough to hide behind. Sarah's throat burned with thirst, her lips cracked and bleeding. Tears streamed down her cheeks, born of fear and frustration, and the terrible knowledge that her horse couldn't maintain this pace much longer. "There she is!" a voice bellowed from behind, closer now. "Pretty little dove's tiring out." Sarah risked a glance backward, and her stomach dropped. They'd closed the distance to perhaps a mile. 6 men on horseback, rifles slung across their backs, revolvers at their hips. Colt Harrington rode at the front, his black hat pulled low over his eyes, a predatory grin visible even from this distance. Ahead, the prairie began to give way to more broken terrain, a series of shallow canyons cutting through the earth like scars. Sarah steered Daisy toward them, hoping desperately for some crevice or cave where she might hide. The mare stumbled slightly, and Sarah felt fresh terror spike through her veins. "Hold on, girl," she pleaded. "Please, just hold on." As they descended into the first canyon, the temperature dropped slightly, the high walls providing blessed shade. Sarah's eyes darted frantically across the rock faces, searching for anything that might offer shelter. The sound of hoofbeats echoed strangely in the enclosed space, making it difficult to judge how close her pursuers had come. Then Daisy's left foreleg buckled. The mare whinnied in pain and distress, nearly throwing Sarah from the saddle. Sarah managed to dismount before the horse went down completely, and her heart shattered as she saw Daisy lying on her side, breathing heavily, clearly unable to continue. The horse had given everything she had. "No, no, no," Sarah sobbed, kneeling beside her faithful companion, stroking her neck. "I'm so sorry, Daisy. I'm so sorry I got you into this." The sound of approaching horses snapped Sarah back to the immediate danger. She looked around wildly, then spotted a narrow cleft in the canyon wall about 50 yards ahead. Without hesitation, she kissed Daisy's forehead one final time, then ran. Her boots slipped on loose gravel as she scrambled toward the opening. Behind her, she heard the gang enter the canyon, their voices echoing off the stone walls. "Horse went down," one of them shouted. "She's on foot." "Spread out," Colt Harrington commanded. "She can't have gone far. And boys, remember, I want her alive and unspoiled. That privilege is mine." The cruelty in his voice made Sarah's blood run cold. She squeezed through the narrow opening in the rock face, finding herself in a small cave that extended back into darkness. It wasn't deep, perhaps only 20 feet, but the entrance was well hidden. She pressed herself against the back wall, trying to control her ragged breathing, her whole body trembling. Outside, she could hear them searching, their boots crunching on gravel, their voices calling back and forth. "Check behind those rocks." "Nothing over here." "Where'd that little rabbit go?" Sarah closed her eyes, praying silently. Her father had raised her with faith, teaching her that God watched over the righteous. But right now, trapped like an animal, she wondered if any divine help would come. Minutes passed like hours. The voices grew closer, then farther, then closer again. Sarah barely dared to breathe. Sweat rolled down her spine despite the relative coolness of the cave. Her muscles ached from remaining so still, but she didn't dare move. Then a shadow fell across the cave entrance. Well, Colt Harrington's voice drawled. "Thought you could hide from me, sweetheart?" Sarah's eyes flew open in horror as the outlaw's silhouette blocked the light. He was crouched at the entrance, peering into the gloom, his hand resting casually on the revolver at his hip. "Come on out now," he continued, his tone mockingly gentle. "I promise I won't hurt you much. Might even enjoy yourself if you're smart about it." "Stay away from me." Sarah's voice emerged stronger than she felt, laced with defiance. "My father will hunt you down. Jonathan Bennett doesn't forgive men who harm his family." Colt laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your daddy's spread is 3 days' ride from here, girl. By the time anyone realizes you're missing, we'll be long gone, and you'll be wishing you'd been more cooperative." He began to squeeze through the narrow opening, and Sarah screamed, a piercing sound of pure terror that echoed through the cave and out into the canyon. Suddenly, Colt stopped. His head turned sharply toward something outside, and Sarah heard it too. A sound like nothing she'd ever heard before, a war cry that seemed to come from the very stones themselves, fierce and otherworldly. "What the hell?" one of the gang members shouted. The sound of gunfire erupted outside the cave, multiple shots fired in rapid succession. Men were yelling, horses whinnying in panic. Colt Harrington backed out of the cave entrance, drawing his revolver. "It's a damn Comanche!" someone screamed. "Where'd he come from?" More gunshots, the clash of metal on metal, the sickening sound of impact. Sarah remained frozen against the back wall of the cave, unable to see what was happening but hearing everything. The fight seemed to rage for several minutes, though it might have been less. Gradually the sounds changed. The gunfire ceased. The yelling faded into groans of pain and then silence. Sarah waited, her heart threatening to beat out of her chest. Was this a rescue or simply a change in captors? She knew the Comanche had been pushed far from these lands in recent years, their people decimated by war and disease, and the relentless expansion of settlers. Those who remained were said to be fierce beyond measure, warriors who knew these lands like no white man ever could. A shadow appeared at the cave entrance again, but this time it was different, taller, moving with fluid grace. A figure crouched at the opening, and Sarah saw him clearly as he ducked inside. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. A Comanche warrior, perhaps 25 years old, with long black hair hanging past his shoulders, adorned with a single eagle feather. His face was striking, with high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes as dark as midnight that seemed to see straight through her. He wore buckskin leggings and a vest, his muscular chest bare and marked with traditional symbols painted in ochre and white. A bow was slung across his back, and he held a bloodied knife in one hand. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Sarah pressed herself harder against the cave wall, uncertain whether she'd been saved or simply claimed by a different predator. Then the warrior spoke, his English accented but clear, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "I came to save you." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She searched his face for any sign of deception, but found only an intense sincerity in those dark eyes. "The white men who hunted you are finished," he continued, sliding the knife into a sheath at his belt. "They will hurt no one else. You are safe now." "Who are you?" Sarah managed to whisper, her voice trembling. "I am called Dakota," he replied. "It means friend to all. though I know your people do not see my people as friends." He extended his hand toward her, palm up, an offering of help. Sarah looked at that hand, at the warrior who had appeared like an avenging angel when she'd needed help most desperately, and made a choice. She reached out and placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was strong but careful as he helped her to her feet and guided her out of the cave. Sarah emerged, blinking into the bright canyon sunlight, and her eyes widened at the scene before her. The 6 outlaws lay scattered across the canyon floor, all dead or dying. Their horses had fled. Colt Harrington lay nearest, his sightless eyes staring at the sky, a look of shock frozen on his face. Sarah felt she should be horrified, but instead she felt only relief. These men would never hurt anyone again. Dakota watched the young woman carefully as she surveyed the aftermath of the battle, noting how she swayed slightly on her feet, exhausted and overwhelmed. Her emerald eyes, though rimmed with tears and fear, held a strength he recognized and respected. She was like the prairie flowers that bent in the storm but did not break. "Come," he said gently, placing a steadying hand on her elbow. "You need water and rest. This place is not safe to remain." Sarah nodded mutely, allowing him to guide her away from the bodies. They walked back to where her mare still lay, and Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears when she saw Daisy struggling to rise. "My horse," she whispered brokenly. "She saved me. She ran until she couldn't anymore." Dakota knelt beside the animal, running his hands expertly along her leg. After a moment, he looked up at Sarah with reassurance in his dark eyes. "Not broken, badly strained, but she will heal with rest. I will help her." He began speaking to the mare in Comanche, low, soothing words that Sarah couldn't understand, but that seemed to calm the animal. Daisy's breathing steadied, and she stopped struggling. Dakota produced a leather pouch from his belt and mixed something with water from his canteen, then carefully administered it to the horse. "What is that?" Sarah asked, her natural curiosity overcoming her fear. "Medicine from the plants of this land," Dakota explained. "It will ease her pain and help the healing begin, but she cannot be ridden for many days." Sarah's face fell as reality crashed back over her. "Then how will I get home? My father's ranch is nearly a week's journey from here." Dakota stood, his tall frame casting a shadow across her. "My camp is half a day's ride north, hidden in the canyons where few white men venture. You will come there, rest, heal. When your horse is strong enough to travel, I will guide you back to your people." Sarah stepped back instinctively, suspicion flaring despite the kindness he'd shown. "Why would you do this? Your people have every reason to hate mine. We've taken your lands, killed your buffalo, broken every treaty. Why would you help me?" A shadow passed across Dakota's handsome features, a mixture of pain and resignation. "You speak truth. Your people have brought great suffering to mine. But you did not do these things. You are one young woman being hunted by evil men. I heard your scream, saw what was happening, and my spirit would not let me turn away. Not all actions must be driven by hatred or revenge. Some can simply be driven by what is right." He paused, his gaze distant for a moment. "I lost my sister 3 winters ago. White traders took her and we never saw her again. When I heard you scream, I heard her voice. I could not save her, but I could save you. Perhaps the spirits led me here for this purpose." Sarah felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the terror that had gripped her all day. She looked at this warrior, this man from a people she'd been taught to fear, and saw only compassion and a deep, abiding sadness. "I'm sorry about your sister," she said softly, "and thank you. Thank you for saving my life. My name is Sarah. Sarah Bennett." "Sarah," Dakota repeated, testing the name on his tongue. "It is a good name. Come, we must move before the sun sets. These men may have friends who will come looking for them." He whistled, a sharp sound that echoed off the canyon walls, and moments later a magnificent paint horse appeared from behind a rock outcropping, its coat a striking pattern of white and brown. The animal was clearly well trained, coming immediately to Dakota's side. "This is Stormrunner," Dakota said, stroking the horse's neck affectionately. "He is strong and will carry us both. I will make a travois for your mare so she can be pulled behind us." Sarah watched in fascination as Dakota worked with swift efficiency, using materials he gathered from the surrounding area. He cut 2 long poles from a stand of cottonwood trees near a hidden spring, lashed them together with strips of leather from his saddle, and created a sturdy frame that could be attached to Stormrunner and would allow Daisy to be transported without putting weight on her injured leg. As he worked, Sarah found herself studying him more closely. His movements were graceful and purposeful, each action carried out with a confidence born of deep knowledge. The muscles of his back and arms flexed beneath his bronzed skin as he secured the bindings. His hands, though capable of such violence as she'd witnessed, were gentle as he positioned Daisy onto the travois, speaking constant reassurances to the frightened mare. "You've done this before," Sarah observed. Dakota glanced at her with a slight smile, the first she'd seen on his face. It transformed his severe features into something warmer, more approachable. "Many times. My people move with the seasons, and injured horses are not uncommon when traveling long distances." Once everything was secured, Dakota mounted Stormrunner and extended his hand down to Sarah. She hesitated only a moment before accepting it, allowing him to pull her up behind him. The horse shifted slightly under the additional weight but showed no distress. "Hold on," Dakota instructed, and Sarah wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. They set off at a careful pace, mindful of Daisy being pulled behind them. As they traveled north, deeper into the canyon lands, Sarah felt the tension gradually leave her body. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The temperature dropped pleasantly, and a light breeze carried the scent of sage and juniper. Dakota navigated the terrain with the ease of someone who knew every rock and ravine. They passed through narrow defiles where the canyon walls rose hundreds of feet on either side, then emerged into broader valleys dotted with pinyon pines. Twice, Dakota stopped to check on Daisy, adjusting the travois and giving her water, his care for the animal evident. As they rode, Sarah found herself relaxing against Dakota's back, her cheek resting against his shoulder blade. She was exhausted, the fear and flight of the day catching up with her. Her eyes grew heavy. "Tell me about your family," Dakota said, his voice gentle, perhaps sensing she needed distraction from her ordeal. Sarah roused herself slightly. "My father, Jonathan Bennett, owns a cattle ranch south of here. It's been in our family for 15 years. My mother died when I was 12. Fever took her one winter. It's just been father and me since then, along with the ranch hands. He taught me to ride, to shoot, to run the ranch business. Said a woman needed to be strong in this territory." "Your father sounds like a wise man," Dakota observed, "and he clearly raised a strong daughter. Not many would have survived what you faced today." "I was lucky you found me," Sarah said quietly. "If you hadn't..." She couldn't finish the thought. "The spirits work in mysterious ways," Dakota replied. "My people believe that nothing happens by chance. Perhaps we were meant to meet, Sarah Bennett." They fell into companionable silence after that, the only sounds the steady clip-clop of Stormrunner's hooves and the whisper of wind through the canyons. The sky darkened to deep purple, then black, and stars began to emerge like scattered diamonds. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Dakota guided Stormrunner through a particularly narrow passage between 2 towering rock faces. They emerged into a hidden valley, sheltered on all sides by high cliffs. A small stream ran through the center, and Sarah could see several hide structures set up near the water. Fires burned outside some of them, casting dancing shadows. As they approached, people emerged from the dwellings. Sarah counted perhaps 20 individuals, men, women, and children, all watching their arrival with varied expressions of curiosity, suspicion, and surprise. An older man with silver-streaked hair and a face lined with wisdom stepped forward, speaking rapidly in Comanche to Dakota. Dakota replied in the same language, gesturing to Sarah and then toward the travois carrying Daisy. The conversation continued for several minutes, and Sarah noticed how others gathered around, listening intently. A few of the women's faces showed hostility, their eyes hard as they looked at her. Finally, the older man nodded and spoke what sounded like a command. 2 younger warriors immediately moved to help with Daisy, carefully unhitching the travois and leading the injured mare toward a sheltered area near the stream. Dakota dismounted and then helped Sarah down, Her legs nearly buckled, stiff from the long ride and weak from exhaustion. He steadied her, his hands firm on her arms. "This is Chief Napaishni, leader of our band," Dakota explained. "I have told him your story. You are welcome here as a guest, under my protection. No harm will come to you." The chief studied Sarah with keen eyes that seemed to see into her soul. When he spoke, his English was halting but understandable. "White woman bring trouble. Soldiers come looking. But Dakota says you are innocent, hunted like deer. We give shelter, but you cannot stay long. Too dangerous for all." "I understand," Sarah replied, meeting his gaze steadily despite her fear. "And I'm grateful for your kindness. I mean no harm to your people." A woman approached, perhaps in her 40s, with kind eyes and graying hair woven into 2 long braids. She spoke to Dakota in Comanche, and he nodded. "This is Pia, my mother," Dakota said. "She will care for you, provide you with food and clean clothes. You are safe here, Sarah. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we will talk more about returning you to your father." Pia took Sarah's hand gently and led her toward one of the hide dwellings. Inside it was warm and surprisingly comfortable, with soft furs laid out for sleeping and a small fire burning in a central pit. Pia brought Sarah a bowl of something that smelled delicious, a stew made with meat and roots, and fresh water in a gourd. Despite the language barrier, Pia's maternal kindness was universal. She helped Sarah remove her torn, dirty dress and provided her with a soft deerskin dress to wear. She brought warm water and cloth so Sarah could wash the dust and fear from her skin. All the while she spoke in gentle Comanche, her tone soothing even if Sarah couldn't understand the words. As Sarah ate the stew, hungrily devouring every bite, Pia sat across from her and began to speak in broken English. "Dakota, good man, good heart. He hurt much since sister taken. But he not let hate consume him. He choose different path. He saved my life," Sarah said softly. "Those men would have killed me, or worse. I owe him everything." Pia nodded knowingly. "He sees you, I think, not just white woman. He sees Sarah, person, soul. This is rare gift to see past what divides us to what connects us." Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest at these words. She thought of Dakota's gentle strength, the way he'd cared for Daisy, the respect with which he'd treated her despite every reason not to. In the span of a few hours, this man had shown her more honor than many men of her own culture. Sarah woke to the sound of children's laughter and the smell of smoke from morning cooking fires. For a moment, disoriented in the unfamiliar dwelling, panic seized her as the events of the previous day came flooding back. Then she remembered where she was and why, and felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. She emerged from the hide structure to find the camp already bustling with activity. Women tended fires and prepared food, men worked on weapons and tools, and children played near the stream under watchful eyes. The morning sun painted everything in warm golden light, and Sarah realized this hidden valley was beautiful, a sanctuary carved from the harsh Texas landscape. Dakota appeared from across the camp leading Stormrunner. When he saw Sarah, his stern expression softened into something warmer. He wore his long hair loose today, and it caught the morning light like strands of polished obsidian. Sarah felt her breath catch slightly at the sight of him. "You slept well?" he asked, approaching her. "Better than I expected, given everything," Sarah admitted. "Your mother was very kind to me. She sees what I see," Dakota said, his dark eyes holding Sarah's gaze with an intensity that made her heart quicken. A good heart, a brave spirit. These things matter more than the color of skin or the language we speak. Before Sarah could respond, one of the young warriors who'd helped with Daisy the night before approached, speaking urgently to Dakota in Comanche. Dakota's expression grew serious, and he replied with what sounded like questions. The conversation continued for several minutes, and Sarah noticed other members of the camp gathering, concern evident on their faces. Finally, Dakota turned to Sarah, his jaw tight. "There are soldiers coming. A patrol from the fort, perhaps 20 men, moving through the canyons. They are still half a day's ride from here, but they are searching for something. For someone." Sarah's blood ran cold. "They're looking for me. My father must have sent word when I didn't arrive at my aunt's." "Oh God, Dakota, I've brought danger to your people." Chief Napaishni stepped forward, his weathered face grave. He spoke in Comanche, and though Sarah couldn't understand the words, The meaning was clear from his tone and gestures. They needed to move, to hide, or to prepare for conflict. "No," Dakota said firmly in English, then repeated in Comanche. He turned to Sarah, taking her hands in his. "I will not let fear dictate our actions. You have done nothing wrong. These soldiers are not our enemy if we approach them with truth." "But your people," Sarah protested. "The army has treaties, but they don't always honor them. If they find you harboring a white woman, they might use it as an excuse to attack, to drive you from these lands too." Dakota's grip on her hands tightened, and she saw something fierce and protective blaze in his eyes. "Then we give them no excuse. I will take you to meet them, explain what happened. Your father is surely with them. We will tell the truth, that I saved you from outlaws who would have harmed you, that my people gave you shelter when you needed it most." "They might not believe you," Sarah said desperately, fear for him overwhelming her fear for herself. "They might see you as a threat, as a savage who took a white woman. Dakota, they could kill you. Or," he said softly, reaching up to cup her face with one calloused hand, "they could see what truly happened. That sometimes, in a world that tries to divide us with hatred and fear, two souls can recognize each other across that divide. That honor and courage are not bound by race or culture." Sarah realized with sudden clarity that something had shifted between them in the short time they'd known each other. What had begun as a rescue had transformed into something deeper, a connection that defied the boundaries their respective worlds tried to impose. She saw her own feelings reflected in Dakota's eyes, an impossible affection blooming in the most unlikely of circumstances. "I don't want to leave you," she whispered, the admission surprising even herself. Dakota's thumb traced gently across her cheekbone. "And I find myself wanting you to stay, Sarah Bennett. But we both know that cannot be. You have a life, a father who loves you, a place in your world. And I have responsibilities to my people, to preserve what little remains of our way of life. It doesn't have to be impossible," Sarah said, her hand covering his where it rested against her face. "The world is changing. Maybe not fast enough, maybe not fairly, but it is changing. People can choose differently than their ancestors did." Before Dakota could respond, Pia approached with Daisy in tow. The mare was walking, still favoring her injured leg, but clearly improved from Dakota's medicine and a night's rest. "She is stronger," Pia said in her halting English. "Can travel slow. Maybe this is sign from spirits. Time for Sarah to return to her world, before two worlds collide with violence." Dakota's jaw clenched with emotion, but he nodded. "My mother speaks wisdom. We will ride to meet the soldiers, show them you are safe and unharmed. It is the only way to prevent bloodshed." The camp mobilized quickly. Chief Napishni gave orders, and the women began gathering belongings while the men prepared weapons, not for attack but for defense if needed. Despite Dakota's plan to meet the soldiers peacefully, they would not be caught unprepared. Dakota saddled both Stormrunner and Daisy, moving with efficiency born of urgency. Sarah changed back into her own dress, which Pia had cleaned and mended as best she could. As she prepared to leave, several of the camp's women approached her, including a young woman about her age who'd been particularly hostile the night before. The young woman spoke in Comanche, her tone no longer angry but sad. Pia translated, "Huyana says she judged you wrongly. She sees now that not all white people are the same, just as Dakota says not all Comanche are the same. She hopes you will remember us kindly. Remember that we are human, with families and dreams like yours." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She took Huyana's hands and squeezed them. "I will never forget any of you. You showed me kindness when you had every reason not to. You showed me that the divisions between our people are created by fear and ignorance, not by any true difference in our hearts." Dakota helped Sarah mount Daisy carefully, ensuring the mare could handle her weight without pain. Then he mounted Stormrunner, and together they set off from the hidden valley, retracing the route they'd taken the night before. As they rode, Sarah committed every detail to memory. The way the morning light illuminated the red canyon walls, the sound of Dakota's voice as he pointed out landmarks, the feeling of riding beside him through this wild, beautiful country. She knew these moments were precious, that soon she would return to her old life, and this brief, intense connection would become a memory. They'd been traveling for perhaps 2 hours when they heard the sounds of many horses ahead. Dakota raised his hand, and they stopped, listening. Then he guided them toward a high point where they could observe without being seen. Below, in a wide canyon, a military patrol moved in formation. Sarah immediately spotted her father riding at the front beside a cavalry captain. Jonathan Bennett looked haggard, his face lined with worry and lack of sleep. Her heart clenched at the sight of his distress. "Father," she breathed. Dakota looked at her, and she saw the resignation in his eyes, the acceptance of what must happen next. "Are you ready?" Sarah turned to face him fully, Daisy shifting beneath her. "Dakota, what we've shared, brief as it's been, has changed me. I see the world differently now. I see your people differently. And I see you as someone extraordinary, someone I wish I'd had the chance to know better." He reached across the distance between their horses and took her hand. "In another life, in another time, perhaps we could have had that chance. But we live in this world, Sarah, with all its complications. Your safety, your future, matters to me. So does the survival of my people. I cannot ask you to sacrifice your world, and you cannot ask me to abandon mine." "Then what do we do with this?" Sarah asked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "This feeling between us?" Dakota brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "We honor it by being brave enough to acknowledge it, and wise enough to know that sometimes love means letting go. You will return to your father, live your life, perhaps marry a good man who can give you the future you deserve. And I will continue to lead my people, to fight for their survival in whatever way I can. But we will both carry this memory, this proof that understanding between our peoples is possible." Sarah wanted to protest, to argue that there must be another way, but the sound of her father's voice calling out orders to his men brought reality crashing back. She wiped her tears and straightened her spine, drawing on the strength that had helped her survive the previous day's ordeal. "How do we do this?" she asked. "With truth and courage," Dakota replied. "Follow my lead." He guided Stormrunner down the slope toward the patrol, and Sarah followed on Daisy. They emerged from the rocks onto the canyon floor about 50 yards ahead of the soldiers. The reaction was immediate. Rifles were raised, men shouted warnings, and the entire patrol came to a halt in defensive formation. "Sarah!" Jonathan Bennett's voice cracked with emotion as he recognized his daughter. He spurred his horse forward, but the cavalry captain grabbed his arm, restraining him. "Hold, Mr. Bennett," the captain ordered. "That's a Comanche warrior with her. This could be a trap." Dakota raised both hands, palms out, showing he carried no weapons in them, though his bow and knife were still on his person. He called out in clear, strong English, "I am Dakota of the Noconi Comanche. I mean no harm. I am returning Sarah Bennett to her father, unharmed and safe." The captain, a lean man with suspicious eyes and a hand on his revolver, called back, "If you've harmed her, savage, you'll hang for it." "Captain Morrison," Sarah's voice rang out, surprising everyone, including herself, with its strength and authority. "Dakota saved my life. The Harrington gang attacked me yesterday, hunted me like an animal. This man risked his own safety to rescue me, killed 6 outlaws to protect me, and his people gave me shelter and care. You will treat him with the respect he deserves." Jonathan Bennett finally broke free and rode forward, his eyes locked on his daughter. When he reached her, he dismounted quickly and helped her down from Daisy, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "Thank God," he whispered into her hair, his voice shaking. "When you didn't arrive, when we found the Harrington gang dead in that canyon, and your horse's tracks leading north, I thought the worst. I thought we'd lost you." "I'm fine, Father," Sarah assured him, holding him tight. "I promise I'm fine. And it's because of Dakota." Jonathan released his daughter and turned to face the Comanche warrior, who had dismounted and stood with quiet dignity before them. The two men assessed each other, one weathered rancher and one young warrior, separated by culture and history but brought together by one young woman's survival. Finally, Jonathan extended his hand. "You saved my daughter's life. There are no words sufficient to thank you." Dakota clasped his hand firmly. "Your daughter is brave and strong. She survived because of her own courage. I simply helped when I could." Captain Morrison had ridden closer, still wary, his men arrayed behind him. "Mr. Bennett, I strongly advise against fraternizing with these people. They're supposed to be on the reservation, and harboring a white woman, even with good intentions, is a violation of treaty terms. Sarah turned on the captain, her eyes blazing. He saved my life. The Harrington gang would have murdered me or worse, and Dakota stopped them. His people gave me shelter, medicine for my horse, food and safety when I had nowhere else to turn. If you use this as an excuse to persecute them, Captain, then you're no better than the outlaws he killed to save me. Jonathan placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, pride evident in his eyes at her fierce defense. My daughter's right, Captain. This man did what your soldiers couldn't. He protected a citizen when she needed it most. I'll be writing a full report to the territorial governor about this, praising Dakota and his people for their assistance. The captain's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. Very well, but this band needs to return to reservation lands. The treaty is clear. The treaty has been broken many times by your government, Dakota said quietly, without accusation, simply stating fact. But we will move on, as we always do. We seek no conflict. Sarah's heart twisted painfully. She looked at Dakota, knowing this was goodbye, and found his dark eyes already on her. In them she saw everything he couldn't say in front of all these witnesses: admiration, affection, and the same aching sense of loss she felt. Jonathan, perceptive as always, seemed to sense the undercurrent between them. He studied Dakota more carefully, then looked at his daughter's face, reading the emotions she couldn't quite hide. Dakota, he said slowly, my ranch is always open to friends. If you ever need supplies, shelter, or assistance, you come to the Bennett Ranch. You'll be welcomed as the man who saved my daughter's life. That's a debt I can never fully repay, but I can offer you my friendship and my respect. Surprise flickered across Dakota's features, followed by genuine gratitude. You honor me, Jonathan Bennett. I will remember your words. He turned to Sarah one final time. Live well, Sarah Bennett. Be happy. And when you look at the stars at night, remember that we all share the same sky, regardless of the walls men try to build between us. Sarah couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, so she simply nodded, committing every detail of his face to memory. The high cheekbones, the determined jaw, the eyes that had seen her not as an enemy, but as a person worthy of saving. Dakota mounted Stormrunner in one fluid motion. He looked at Captain Morrison. My people will move deeper into the canyon lands, away from settlement areas. We want only to live in peace with what little land remains to us. Without waiting for a response, he wheeled his horse around and rode back the way he'd come, his long hair streaming behind him. Sarah watched until he disappeared around a bend in the canyon, her heart feeling like it might shatter. Jonathan wrapped his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Tell me about him, he said gently as they walked toward their horses. And Sarah did. As the patrol began the journey back toward civilization, she told her father everything about the Harrington gang's attack, her desperate flight, Dakota's timely rescue, and the unexpected connection she'd found with a man from a world supposedly so different from her own. She spoke of Pia's kindness, the camp's initial suspicion that transformed to acceptance, and the brief but intense understanding she'd shared with Dakota. Jonathan listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions, but mostly just letting his daughter unburden her heart. As a rancher who'd lived in Texas for 15 years, he'd seen firsthand both the cruelty and the humanity on all sides of the conflicts that plagued the territory. Do you have feelings for him? He finally asked. Sarah considered lying, then decided her father deserved the truth. Yes, I know how impossible it is, how little sense it makes after knowing him for barely a day. But yes, I do. He's unlike any man I've ever met, Father. The honor in him, the strength combined with gentleness, the way he chose compassion over hatred despite everything his people have suffered. How could I not feel something for a man like that? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment as they rode. Finally, he said, The world is changing, Sarah. Maybe not as fast as it should. Maybe not always in the right direction, but it is changing. Your mother, God rest her soul, she always said that love and understanding would ultimately prove stronger than fear and hatred. I'd like to believe she was right. He paused, then added, If Dakota ever comes to our ranch, he'll be welcomed. And if someday the world changes enough that a rancher's daughter and a Comanche warrior could find a life together, well, Stranger things have happened in this territory. Sarah looked at her father in surprise, seeing the quiet acceptance in his weathered face, and felt a surge of love for this man who'd raised her to think for herself, to value character over convention. "Thank you, Father," she whispered. They rode on through the afternoon, the patrol maintaining formation around them. Sarah looked back only once, toward the canyon lands where Dakota and his people lived their precarious existence between the old ways and the inevitable future. She thought of his words about sharing the same sky, and she made a silent promise to herself and to him. She would remember. She would honor what they'd shared by living with courage and compassion, by working to bridge the divides between people rather than reinforcing them. And someday, somehow, perhaps the world would change enough that understanding could triumph over fear, that two people from different worlds could build a life together. Until then, she would carry the memory of a Comanche warrior who'd come to save her, and in doing so had saved something even more precious, her faith in the possibility of connection across any divide. 3 weeks later, as Sarah stood on her father's ranch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, a lone rider appeared on the horizon. Her heart leaped as she recognized the paint horse, the proud bearing of the rider. Dakota had come, accepting her father's invitation, choosing connection over separation.